Just moments ago saying that the shooter was this 59-year-old man, John Russell Hauser. Officers say that he intended on killing and he had an escape plan as well. But that did not work. Here's what the police chief said just a few minutes ago.
Our shooter is John Russell Hauser, H-O-U-S-E-R. He's a white male, 59 years of age. He previously resided in the state of Alabama. He's kind of a drifter. He's been in Lafayette since early July, as far as we can tell. He was staying at a local motel on University Avenue.
Casey Stiegel is on this story for us from our Dallas newsroom. So what else are we learning about this suspect so far, Casey?
Well, Martha, you heard the police chief referring to him as a drifter. Apparently, he had multiple addresses in multiple states, and he does have a criminal record, including things like arson. Cops say 59-year-old John Russell Hauser rented a room at a nearby Motel 6, very close to the theater, and police have collected evidence from that location, like wigs and disguises. What remains unclear is why he targeted this movie theater, this particular showing of the newly released comedy Trainwreck. Any real sense of a motive, basically. Police say he bought a ticket for the screening. About 20 minutes into the film, he stood up in the dark and started firing. Eyewitnesses describe hearing a noise like firecrackers. The Lafayette police chief saying the gunman tried blending in with the crowd to escape until he saw law enforcement already on the scene. Listen.
It is apparent that he was intent on shooting and then escaping. What happened is the quick law enforcement response forced him back into the theater, at which time he shot himself.
Investigators say they have quite an elaborate crime scene to process. As you can imagine, more than 30 shell casings found in that movie theater, and it could take several more hours this morning before that portion of the investigation is wrapped up, Martha.
So the police sheriff gave us some new detail on how the victims are doing. What did we learn there, Casey?
That's right. Out of the 9 that were taken to area hospitals, 2 people have already been released. At this hour, 1 person remains critical. They had to be rushed into surgery overnight. Police tell us the victims range in age from late teens to early 60s. The 2 who lost their lives have been identified as 21-year-old Macy Bro and 33-year-old Jillian Johnson. Now, about 100 people were inside that particular theater when the shots rang out. Hundreds more in other theaters watching other movies. But thanks to the quick thinking of a school teacher who was shot, the building evacuated very fast because she managed to pull the fire alarm, alerting everyone inside that multiplex to this emergency, Martha.
Incredible story there. Thank you very much, Casey.
Wow. Comedian Amy Schumer is reacting to the deadly shooting. She stars in that film Trainwreck that Casey mentioned there. In a tweet, she says, quote, "My heart is broken. All my thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Louisiana." She wrote the film as well and is the star. It's been doing very well. It's got great reviews, too. But this is not the kind of review anyone expected at that release in Lafayette, Martha.
Yeah, that's kind of a esoteric little response.
What
to it.
the?
Yeah, Sigmund Kramer joining me now. So it happens again. And by the way, the headline's over at usdailyreview.com, the sister news site of the Price of Business show. The headline over there is "Shooting in a Louisiana Gun-Free Zone." That story, of course, even in Fox News, I don't think it was mentioned, the fact that it was a gun-free zone. That drum needs to be hit constantly whenever this happens. Over at US Daily Review, it says, "This happened again. Another gun-free zone has attracted another murderer at a place intended for family entertainment. People in the Grand Theater on Johnson Street in Lafayette, Louisiana, had that entertainment disrupted in a violent way, ending with deaths and injuries. It is speculated that John Hauser, 58, had every intention to take flight after these murders, since he had disguises in his vehicle that would be used to cover his trail. Such planning is the type that comes with one who has confidence they will have little resistance, which is what makes gun-free zones like this theater so attractive to mass murderers. Virtually all mass shootings take place in gun-free zones in the United States. Fortunately, the quick response of law enforcement, there were much fewer deaths than expected, and the perpetrator ended up taking his own life. But why don't we hear that in every story? Is there something I'm missing in that, Sigmund? Is there some incongruency of logic that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean,
and then, by the way, that's at usdatareview.com. Click the politics section. It will be under breaking news. We'll keep it under breaking news so you can easily find it. Go ahead.
I think that has more to do with the lack of brain cells from the Fox News organization.
Well, and they're among the best, right?
I wouldn't say that.
Of TV, who's better?
They're all ridiculous. They all have their own agenda. In this case, apparently the agenda was whether or not Amy Schumer's reviews were warranted for the film. I don't know why he said that when he could have brought up instead, this is another shooting in another gun-free zone. You know, it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling how they don't pick up on it. I'm sure they will. I'm sure that will come into the narrative. But maybe they were trying to avoid politicization of the issue.
Yeah, but in 48 hours, Barack Obama and Michael Bloomburg will be beating the drum,
of gun control.
Totally, yeah. Exploiting this is another example of that guy shouldn't have a gun. No, people who were competent and moral people should have had guns. To blow that son of a gun away as soon as he pulled out and shot a person. You can't prevent people from hurting people. And the biggest killing of people, mass murder in this country, took place in a school. And the biggest school killing, rather, which is one of the most favorite, for gun-free zones. That happened with fertilizer and gasoline in a school up in Michigan in the early 1900s is where that took place. You can't underestimate the entrepreneurial nature of a murderer. They're going to figure out how to murder people.
Well, look in the UK.
Oklahoma City, right? Oklahoma City, how they do that. If you really want to kill them, and that's stuff people have to have in order to grow an economy. And so these arguments are ridiculous. The real argument, the competent argument, would be, too bad that was a gun-free zone, or at least that wasn't a properly regulated gun-free zone, because my argument is, and I've been beating this drum now since 2013, my argument is if you're going to make the claim of being gun-free, you better have the armament and trained personnel to defend it.
To secure each and every individual that comes into that zone.
Yep.
Because you're taking away, it's the same thing that the military's facing right now, Kevin. The 4 Marines that got killed, or the 3 Marines and the other, I guess he was a naval personnel, who got killed just last week. And at the recruiting zone or wherever it was, and, in Chattanooga. And they were unable to have arms on the premises to defend themselves. And so if you're going to take away a person's natural, God-given right to protect himself, then you better be damn sure that you've got other people there to protect them.
Absolutely.
From outside influences and forces that may wish to do them harm. And, we're seeing even pushback from the Army on this. They still don't want their Army personnel carrying sidearms. And I think it's insane. And for civilians to be put in the same situation or similar situation in a gun-free zone, again, there's a lack of sanity and common sense, because all you're doing is creating a magnetic environment for the crazies and the evildoers who know that they're going to risk very little, on their own to go in and take out targets at will. It's sitting ducks. And it's like literally shooting fish in a barrel.
Literally.
And it's unfortunate that we as a country instead are focused on trying to take guns away from people rather than focusing on letting people defend themselves. Mm-hmm. Because there will always be bad guys. They won't always have a gun. They might have a knife. They might have explosives. Look in the UK. What's going on there? They've banned guns.
Right.
Now they're having knife buybacks, knife turn-ins, because they're afraid that there's been a huge, huge increase of knife, stabbing attacks. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, turn in your knife and we'll give you some money.
To a movie.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Sorry.
But I mean, the situation is gotten so ridiculous in the UK that okay, there are no guns. That's off the table. It's been off the table for years. Oh, now we got to go after knives.
Yeah. Back in 2013, Steve Stockman, a friend of this program, introduced a bill to simply prohibit any institution from being able to call them a gun-free zone. Of course, that went nowhere. He says it's not only because the current law is an infringement of the Second Amendment of the Constitution, but because it is dangerous. Again, places where criminals know where there will not be guns are places they want to go to in order to commit crimes. It's common sense.
It is common sense.
It's simple common sense. And so, how many more lives are going to have to go, and how many more times we're going to hear ridiculous arguments from the left that we need more gun control? I just, I know why it happens, and a lot of it even sounds conspiratorial, but some of it at this point is simply obvious. We've got a country that's all about control, not about liberty, and certainly not about safety.
Right. And a great way to look at that is the traffic light cameras that we had in Houston, and they said that they were for, safety purposes, but people were getting in all sorts of accidents trying to avoid getting a ticket through the traffic cameras. Finally, those went away, but it turns out it was for revenue purposes. And so again, It's about control. It's not about safety. Let's not lie about the situation. In this case, it's not about safety. It's about gun control over the citizenry. They don't like the idea that Americans have guns. They don't like the idea that they could rise up and affect change through force if they needed to. And they don't want that ability. And I don't think there's anything conspiratorial about admitting that. I think it's just the nature of people to be twitchy when it comes to the idea of a mob of people with weapons being able to do what they see fit, whenever they see fit, even if it means, losing your power. That's kind of common sense for the politicians not to like that idea. At least a lot of the politicians.
All I know is an armed society is a polite society. That's all I know.
Well, the ones that are more interested in exerting power and influence over the people are the ones who don't want the people to be armed.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so, and all these naive folks out there who keep on thinking that it's crazy to think that, government has nefarious motives, I'm telling you right now, it's so obvious that they do because they continue to defy common sense and things like this. All right, when we come back, we're going to have much more for you. Actually, we won't be coming back. We're going to wrap it up with that. Man, time goes fast when you're having fun.
That's right.
And I have it all the time on this program. Do want to mention today's program brought to you in part by the priority list of priceofbusiness.com. And have a great day. Spend it wisely right here on this station.